Hey everybody, thanks for coming. This is a pretty rapid talk. I have to compress this into 20 minutes. Last time I gave it, it was about 30. So forgive me if I have to go a little bit fast. But as Mary Elizabeth said, I am the lead game designer at Games for Change. And I've been in this games and learning space for over 15 years now. So I have collected a series of hot takes that will hopefully distill, compress, and communicate out to y'all some of the pitfalls, but also some of the sort of best practices and best approaches, philosophies for making good educational games. So my first extremely bold and brave hot take is many educational games suck. And that's actually not to, I would say most of the people outside of the space that we're in today are the ones maybe making those, so no shade on anybody that's here. I'm probably not talking about your game, maybe. I am going to talk about this game though. Does anyone recognize what's here? Math Blasters? Yay! All right, we recognize this game back from the 90s or whatnot. What do we have here? We have an educational game. It's asking us 0 plus 7 equals what? We presumably have some trash that we might have to shoot and figure out what the correct answer is. If I shoot that 7 piece of garbage shoe over to the left, I guess I get it right. Inferring more things from this screen, we might gain some energy by getting it correct, or if we get it wrong, maybe we lose a life, right? Do we think this is a good educational game design? Maybe, maybe not. My opinion here is that what we have is the Scooby-Doo reveal of the Math Blasters activity really just being a multiple choice quiz question disguised as a game. And what is it really doing here, right? We have this incredible opportunity in this interactive medium to do something cool with addition, make some kind of game mechanic or some kind of interaction that gets at something special about addition. Instead, what we've done is made a game around the act of choosing the bubble A, B, C, or D. And that's kind of the big problem that we see in a lot of the games we have in the educational space. I have to bring it to something a little more modern. You know, Math Blasters was quite a while ago. This is actually a fairly recent product that, I'm not gonna name it by name, but it has a Pokemon sort of style gameplay with collecting monsters, having battles, and then when your monsters fight, they run out of energy. And to get energy back, you have to do a math problem or some sort of math quiz question to get the energy back, right? So instead of having a really cool math experience in the game, we are interrupting fun and inserting math to give you the reward to have more fun. And the crazy thing to me here is that you actually have this, if you've played a Pokemon kind of game, you know it's an RPG with math baked into the systems. And somehow this product decides that, no, we're not really going to make math out of the addition and subtraction, possibly even multiplication or other things inherent in that. We're just going to ignore that, put it aside, take the game away from them, and periodically bring it back when they get to play or when they get to answer the question correctly. So that's bringing us to hot take number 2, is that it's not tug of war, and it doesn't have to be tug of war, right? So the tug of war is between, of course, right, the idea of you have learning on one side, brain, you have fun on the other side, smiley face. And it often feels like we are putting them on kind of like a scale, right? You pile on a bunch of fun on one side, or a bunch of learning on one side, and then you have to like palate cleanse or motivate the kids by tacking on some fun on the other side until those things presumably balance out, right? But you could also go the other way. You might have a game that has a lot of really, really fun elements. It could be action-packed. You could have really cool graphics, kind of like Math Blasters, right? It puts cool graphics on top of a quiz, but maybe not even really adding much to the learning and maybe even distracting from it, right? We have So from my point of view, rather than tug of war, it's really more like a yin-yang of the two things together, right? The learning and the fun have to be integrated with each other. They have to have a relationship with each other. They even come from each other, right? And yin and yang, even though I cover them with my cute little emoticons, right? There's actually a black spot in the white, and in the black there's a white spot down there. The learning and the fun contain each other, and that's a really, really important part of what in my perspective is the proper way to approach this. Another way to approach it, and this is my extremely crude line drawing, is that the learning and the fun not only come from each other, but they kind of have to meet each other in the middle. when we're looking at educational game design, we should be actually very similar to what Eric was saying before. Rather than starting with like an outcome and a specific solution and trying to drive a straight line to it, the outcome and the solution has to adapt to games. And then games themselves and the game design have to adapt to the kind of learning. Different types of fun from games are more appropriate for certain learning goals than others, and they have to kind of meet in the middle. And so having that openness and that opportunity for those both things to evolve are really, really important when it comes to coming to the proper design. Hot take number 3, it's like cooking. I'm about to use a food metaphor that many of us are familiar with, but I'm going to go somewhere with it. But coming back to this Scooby-Doo reveal, quiz disguised as a game, many of us in this field liken that to chocolate-covered broccoli. And right, so we have a thing we want them to consume, a piece of learning, that's the broccoli, and we're trying to distract them or make it more palatable by putting something that doesn't belong with it together, right? So we got chocolate and broccoli. Now, I've seen this metaphor be examined from many different angles. One that kind of resonated with me in the past was, well, you know, some foods actually go well with chocolate. What if we made chocolate-covered peanut butter? Peanut butter is nutritious, and it goes well with chocolate, so why not make games that are the proper thing, where you make that melding of the two pieces of food work well together? And it's gotten me thinking in the past, and I do like this approach, but it also made me realize, and right, the approach is to make those two things harmonious, and I like that, but I still think the metaphor is a little bit off. So going back to chocolate-covered broccoli, this metaphor, well, first of all, what if I need to teach them broccoli or make them eat broccoli, right? Like, sometimes peanut butter is not the thing that we are sort of being tasked to do. But I also think that the metaphor of chocolate-covered broccoli, it kind of does a disservice to both the chocolate and the broccoli, right? So on the left, chocolate is sugary, it doesn't really add much nutritional value, it's just there as a distraction from the broccoli. And sometimes we treat the games like that too, that the games are just there to make it prettier, to make it more engaging on a superficial level. On the other hand, we also have broccoli, where we're approaching it as something that we consider inherently unpalatable, that no one likes. Who actually likes eating broccoli? I do. I love broccoli. Did you like it as a kid too? Some of us? Yeah, right? I loved broccoli as a kid. So like the fact that I would even need to be sort of tricked into eating broccoli with chocolate never made much sense to me. But thinking about it some more, and I'm thinking about a food metaphor that really exemplifies what I believe is the proper combination of the sort of learning and the games, is how do we prepare broccoli in a way that makes it more delicious, but also adds nutritional value? So I come to the idea, and I love this image because it's so beautiful and delicious looking, right? The games can be cooking broccoli with garlic and oil and lemon, right? These are things that make broccoli palatable, delicious. They enhance the flavor of broccoli. The broccoli is enhanced by, both sides enhance each other, right? And those things even add nutritional value, you know, garlic, oil, these are all things that are actually good for you. And so when you put them together, you actually have a experience better than the sum of their parts. So that is the food metaphor phase of my talk. We are trying to cook broccoli with garlic and lemon and oil. So getting a little bit more into the nitty-gritty, I say that games are perfect teaching tools, and I want to give a few examples of games that I think are great examples, and try to tell you a little bit why. All right, first up, because we're doing we had Math Blasters from the early days, so I'm also going to talk about Oregon Trail. Oregon Trail is a great learning game because it puts you in the shoes of those travelers and really helps you through the game mechanics understand what that journey was like. You know, it was dangerous. People died of dysentery. We remember the dysentery. I might not remember, the specific locations on the trail. I might not remember dates or anything like that, but I do remember what that experience felt like, and that's teaching me something about history by putting me in those shoes. Second up, this is a programming game called Lightbot. There are many programming games out there, but I like this one a lot because of its simplicity and elegance. It allows you to use little drag and drop things to make the Lightbot go across the maze and has to light up all of the green squares. And this is a great example of a game that gives you the chance to try something, see how it works, get immediate feedback on whether or not it worked and why, and give you the opportunity to iterate and try again very quickly. Lightbot is really good at showing you how your code is sort of messing up if you wrote it incorrectly, and gives you the opportunity to fix it and do it again very, very fast. This is a game that I discovered in some of my recent musings. It's called Super Algebra. And in this game, you are the Rat King on the left, and you have all your little minions that are numbers, and you get to do math on those numbers to make them match the enemies that you're trying to defeat on the right. And so, in contrast to Math Blasters, where there's only one correct answer, in Super Algebra, you can creatively combine the numbers and do math with them to solve the problem of matching the left to the right. It makes a much more engaging, robust, choice-oriented math experience. Of course, we have Minecraft, right? This is putting you in an environment that you have almost unlimited agency to affect the world and design and create things in a game-like space. So that just automatically makes it an amazing learning tool. And of course, it also puts a lot of control in the hands of content creators to create educational spaces, environments for students to interact with. And finally, this is a game called Wake Tales from the Aqua Lab. It is an ocean research game that is modeled after kind of like a Metroidvania type game. So you are exploring space, you're exploring the ocean, you're upgrading your sub, you're accessing new areas of space. Oh my God, I keep saying space. The ocean. And in the meantime, you're collecting scientific data, learning about all the different environments that you explore, what kind of organisms are in there, through this extremely exploratory kind of way. So these are the types of examples of games that avoid that whole chocolate covered broccoli that I believe are the oil, lemon, garlic versions of game-based learning. But I also say, this is hot topic number 4, I probably should put numbers on this. Games suck at teaching. And again, very bold, very brave, but I'll tell you what that means. This is The Grapes of Wrath. Now, if I was a teacher and I just took the book, The Grapes of Wrath, and just chucked it at your face and said, go read it, you'll learn about the Great Depression. Like, that's me being like a really bad teacher, right? It takes a really good teacher to pretend she's holding The Grapes of Wrath and not like a picture book, but it takes a really great teacher to present The Grapes of Wrath to your students, contextualize what we see, read it, kind of over time, and really turn that into a learning experience. Now, for some reason, there is an undercurrent that we are trying to make games be like the replacement for the teacher, that we just want to like chuck the game in front of the kids and the game will just do all the teaching for us, and the kids are going to learn everything they need to learn just by playing the game. But what I posit is that instead of the game replacing the teacher, the game is really just The Grapes of Wrath. The game needs to be presented by the teacher, it needs to be contextualized and introduced, and supporting activities need to be built around the game for it to be the proper educational tool. So keeping that in mind, next slide. Keeping that in mind, we should be designing games with this kind of idea at the forefront of our minds that if we're making educational games, we don't want to design a game that's trying to replace a teacher. We're trying to create something that becomes a teaching tool that actually does affect how we might design a game. It also means that our games don't have to boil the ocean. That's what this is a picture of. If we're familiar with the phrase. The phrase boiling the ocean means like trying to do too much, right? And so in so many cases, we are looking at our games and saying, yeah, it should replace a teacher, and it should like teach everything the kid needs to know from soup to nuts on this educational topic. And it's really just putting so much of a burden on the game that it becomes almost impossible for the game to meet those expectations. So we don't boil the ocean with our games. That goes to say that a game doesn't even need to encapsulate the entire learning cycle, right? There's many phases of learning something for a student. There's the introductory preparation period. There's the actual, information or skill gathering. Then there's like an assessment phase afterwards. I think we are putting a lot of pressure on games to do all of those things all at once in one game. And again, that's not really necessarily the most effective way to use a game as a tool. If it could just do one of those things really well, and we're relying on the teacher to do those other parts of the experience, you might have a much, much more effective product, a much more effective game than if it was trying to do that entire cycle all at once. What I'm really trying to do, tell you, everyone who's designing and or teaching, is just to free your mind, right? We don't have to do everything. It shouldn't do everything. They can be better designed if they don't do everything. And I want to drive this home with I have to summarize this because the slide doesn't really explain it super well. It was a study that was, I think, done by Filament Games now, many years ago. This was a study in which a group of students was given 3 different lessons along the same learning topic by the same teacher. Group A got a completely traditional non-game-based lesson. Group B got only the game. Group C got a hybrid lesson combining traditional learning activities and a game. And can you guess which one was which based on the numbers here? They're just left to right? A was traditional, B was the, traditional was on the left, game only was in the middle, and the 10% gain was the hybrid lesson. So it just goes to show that it comes out in the research as well. All right, I can also tell you that competition is stiff and it isn't. What does that mean? It kind of depends completely on the context in which you're making a game for learning or a game for impact. Option one is we are targeting kids at home, wanting them to play on their iPad or from the App Store or whatever. And guess what? Your competition is all of the incredible amounts of content and engaging experiences a kid might have available to them at home and after school, so things like Fortnite. And it's a very, very tall order to design a game, to design an experience that will draw their attention away from that. On the other hand, when it comes to education games in the educational space, your competition is any non-game activity. And this is both a blessing and a curse, right? On one hand, it does allow things that might not be the best design to still flourish, because at least Math Blasters, for example, is still better than that multiple choice question, but we're still leaving all that potential behind, right? So the cool thing, though, is that you can make a well-designed experience that isn't as flashy as Fortnite, but kids are going to love it if it's in competition with everything else that's going on in the classroom that isn't quite as exciting. The other thing that your competition is stiff for is for teachers' time and attention and resources. So I hate to say it, but if your game isn't completely free, completely easy to access in an immediate way, and completely accessible via a web browser, it is probably not going to get seen by very many people. Should really, really be targeting those platforms if we're looking to have an impact. I can't make promises about the profitability there, but I can make promises about the number of eyeballs you will get. All right, play is a word. Play is a doing word. I am quoting Massive Attack by Teardrop by Massive Attack. It was the theme song from House, but the word was love, not play. I'm going to do a quick little bit of game design 101 with y'all, right? And I have to do this quickly because I have like 3 minutes. There are 6 parts of a game. All games have these 6 parts. First is the space. Where does the game take place? What are the boundaries between the game and the real world? Second, what's the goal? How do you win? What am I trying to accomplish? Thirdly, what's the challenge? What's the thing that makes approaching that goal an interesting and worthwhile activity? What's between me and that goal? Next up are the core mechanics. What are the actions I'm repeating over and over again to advance my way to that goal? Fifthly are components. These are the pieces, right? Core mechanics are kind of verbs. Components are kind of the nouns of play. What are the pieces, enemies, items, all of those things that are interacting with each other in the game to make it a playable experience. Lastly are the rules. How is play structured? What can you do? What can't you do? How do things respond when X event happens? How does Y come about? And so I'm giving you these 6 parts of a game because one of the easiest ways that I have found to approach what makes a really great learning game is to focus on one of these 6. And the one that I want to focus on are core mechanics. Core mechanics, being the verbs that you are repeating over and over again, are the thing that your player is going to take away from the game the biggest, the most, whether you like it or not. So if you have a game in which those core mechanics aren't having you access the learning over and over again, or aren't the skill you're trying to teach over and over and over again, you are missing the biggest, baddest driver of learning in games. Right? So looking at classic games, core mechanics are things like jumping in Mario, or pointing and shooting in first-person shooters, or reading and responding to dialogue in RPGs, or exploration in games like Subnautica, Minecraft, right? These are very naturally fun verbs of play. Sometimes they are applicable to learning, sometimes they're not. But it's really important to be choosing the proper genre, the proper core mechanics in a game to get at learning as quickly as you can. Core mechanics are the difference in what your player takes away from your game. If we're thinking about any kind of traditional RPG, D&D, Baldur's Gate, whatever, many of these games are presenting to you that you're like the hero, you're saving the day, you're fighting the dragon. But sometimes in these games, the core mechanics tell you, well, I kill almost everything I encounter, and I loot almost everything else that I encounter. And so even though the game is telling me I'm the hero, the core mechanics are telling me that I'm a murder hobo. Right? So that's why core mechanics are so important. Those are really what the message of your game is when you really boil it down. So coming back to some of my exemplar games, right? What are the core mechanics of these games, and how are they directly related to the learning? Core mechanic of Lightbot, right? It's sequencing commands, and that's exactly what you need to learn in order to be a good programmer. The core mechanics of superalgebra are creatively remixing and interacting with numbers in a very fundamental way. Core mechanics of Minecraft: building, exploration, creativity. Core mechanics of Wake is exploration, and it just so happens that we're exploring a very authentically designed environment, so therefore I'm learning about that environment, real life oceans. Any educators in here might also know the idea of Bloom's taxonomy, and so this is to try to take it home that Bloom's taxonomy is also about verbs. The core mechanics are verbs, and so are these. And if you are not familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, it's essentially saying things at the bottom of the pyramid are the types of verbs that we do in the classroom that are like the lower order of thinking, and then we go up the pyramid and we get higher and higher and higher order levels of thinking. So right at the very bottom we have remember, recall, basic facts. Like those are the sort of chocolate covered broccoli type activities that we might get in games. And then we go up the pyramid here, and a lot of the games that I was giving you before probably apply to like understand, apply, analyze, evaluate. But then yeah, very, very, very at the top, I put the little Minecraft dirt block there because the very top of Bloom's taxonomy is creation, and so Minecraft, things that allow students to create, end up being some of the best, most effective games for learning. I have one more slide. I almost did this in 20 minutes. This is my last slide because in this space, in the space of games and learning, I have had people say like, they kind of lament, right? Sorry, this is a picture of all of the Pokemon that existed circa, I want to say 2014. So this isn't even all the Pokemon that exist now. There's probably like double this. But people will be like, why will kids memorize like every single one of these Pokemon, their names, their abilities and whatnot, but they won't like sit and memorize the things that I want them to memorize, right? And so what's the difference? The difference is that Pokemon is presenting kids a really interesting system of core mechanics with which to interact with that information. I want to know that Vulpix is a fire type because I know that the fire types will beat the grass types, and Bulbasaur is a grass type. So if I want to beat the Bulbasaur, I got to get the Vulpix out, right? The core mechanics of Pokemon are the thing that are motivating me to memorize ridiculous amounts of information. So any teachers here who are saying, well, core mechanics are verbs, verbs are skills, what if I want them to learn content? You still have to go back to the core mechanics. You have to build a set of core mechanics that give you the motivation to then attack a whole ton of content. But those two things can be very well married together if you do it correctly. Yeah, so that's everything I've got. Thanks so much for listening and letting me give you all my hot takes.
Anyone have a question for Brendon? I'm going to grab that one and I'll take this to them.
Sorry if this is an obvious question, but number one, can you take us on like your day-to-day of like what being a game designer is? And number two, what is the difference between game design and narrative design? Do they correlate?
Yeah, this is a much louder mic. No, it's fine. Day-to-day of a game designer is pretty different depending on which game designer you're talking to. As a game designer in this space, as the game designer at Games for Change, I have a blessedly and awesomely eclectic job. So sometimes I'm working with people like Mary Elizabeth to share game-based learning and game design with other people, teachers and students. But if I am doing game design, I'm doing a lot of kind of the thinking I was walking you through, right? If I have a particular learning goal, what are the core mechanics that I'm trying to get at, and what's a game type that I could maybe start with and start to modify towards my ends? I can say that starting with a pre-existing game and being inspired by that pre-existing game is a really, really awesome and straightforward way to do it. I have proven game mechanics already kind of at my disposal, and then I can kind of tailor that to the learning. Have you played Settlers of Catan? Do you know that game? No? Okay. It's a like 2-dice rolling game, really cool probability mechanic, but the game is very complex. So I I helped create a game at the Institute of Play years ago. I basically started with Settlers of Catan, stripped away complexity, honed in on that double dice rolling mechanic, and made the game all about that. And then made it a probability game, right? That kind of thing. And then narrative design versus game design. Narrative design is definitely a component of game design. And of course, depending on the designer you're talking to, some people specialize in narrative type games or narrative design. Some people might be more, action, physics, game mechanics oriented. Narrative is another really amazing avenue in which to do learning and teaching. And I've really been kind of grappling with that over the years because I have been very core mechanics focused in my career, but I had the opportunity to work on a bunch of narrative learning experiences several years ago that really showed me how narrative has just as much power, and it has a very similar thing where that authenticity of the narrative is so important. You want to be creating characters and conflicts and the traits and the needs and the wants of the characters have to be really, really well aligned with your learning to contextualize it well. Otherwise, you run the risk of making your characters just a mouthpiece for information, and usually you don't want that. Of course.
Thank you so much, Brendon. And nobody is in here for the next 30 minutes, so if you have some questions for him, feel free to get up and maybe have a more informal conversation.
Of course, yeah. I'm around. I'd
Great.
love to chat with all y'all.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. Let's give Brendon a hand.